The trouble started the moment 29-year-old Jade Thompson became the youngest HOA president in the history of Cypress Grove. Stylish, bold, and addicted to control, she strutted through the neighborhood with a clipboard like it was a badge of power. Her designer sunglasses, sharp ponytail, and perfectly planned attitude made people step out of her way before she even spoke. And Jade loved that. The whispers, the fear, the idea that she could bend an entire neighborhood with nothing more than a rule book and a raised eyebrow. Most people were intimidated by her confidence and her constant need to prove she belonged in a position older residents thought she was too young for. But one person didn't flinch. David Carter, a calm, soft-spoken black homeowner who had lived in Cypress Grove longer than Jade had been an adult. David was known for minding his business, helping neighbors fix fences, and grilling on weekends. He wasn't a troublemaker, but he also wasn't someone who bowed to unnecessary authority. It was a warm Saturday morning when Jade stormed onto his driveway, sandals clicking sharply against the pavement, irritation bubbling inside her like a volcano about to erupt. David was washing his car, humming quietly to himself, water dripping off the sponge in his hand. Before he even turned around, Jade's shadow was already cast over the hood of his truck. "David!" she snapped, waving a fresh white violation slip like it was a police warrant. "This is your third notice. Your lawn is 2 inches over the limit. That's against policy." She said the last word with the tone of someone announcing criminal charges. David raised an eyebrow and looked at the lawn, neat, clean, hardly anything wrong with it. 2 inches, he repeated, letting the sponge fall gently into the bucket. "Jade, it's literally grass." "It's community standards," she fired back, planting a hand on her hip. Her ponytail swung like an exclamation mark. "I expect compliance." Immediately, David took a calming breath. He wasn't a man who liked arguments. "I already cut it this week," he said, wiping his hands on a towel. "Well, clearly not well enough." Jade stepped closer, tapping her clipboard dramatically, loud enough for nearby porches to hear. "And don't make this difficult," she added, voice dropping into a threat wrapped in professionalism. "I can escalate this." David stared at her, completely baffled. "Jade, I've lived here 12 years. No one has ever cared about my lawn." She smirked, leaning in as if revealing a secret. "Maybe no one wanted to say it," she said. "I'm not afraid to." From behind curtains and half-open blinds, neighbors peeked out, some lifted phones, some whispered. Everyone knew Jade had been itching for a dramatic showdown, something to cement her authority, something to show she wasn't the young pushover older residents thought she'd be. David could already feel the energy shifting. The tension was thick enough to chew. Jade tilted her sunglasses down, eyes gleaming with the thrill of confrontation. She enjoyed the spectacle, the audience, the chance to flex her new power. David straightened his shoulders. He was done playing polite. "Jade," he said evenly, meeting her stare, "cutting grass isn't the issue here, and we both know it." Her smile faltered. The neighborhood held its breath. And just like that, a simple lawn dispute became the spark that would set off the biggest HOA showdown Cypress Grove had ever seen. The lawn notice, it turned out, was only the beginning. 3 days after confrontation, another crisp white envelope showed up in David's mailbox, the kind Jade delivered with the same enthusiasm most people reserve for birthday gifts. Violation. Porch decor does not meet HOA aesthetic guidelines. David frowned at the paper, then at the porch, where the only decor was a small potted plant his daughter had given him for Father's Day. A bright green succulent in a simple white ceramic pot. Nothing flashy, nothing unusual, nothing worth complaint. But Jade had circled the photo she'd taken of it in red ink, as if it were a crime scene. David tried to shrug it off, but the next morning another warning came. His car was too old for the neighborhood image. The car in question was a clean, well-kept SUV he'd had for years, the same one he used to drive his daughter to school and help neighbors haul furniture. Even his neighbors whispered, confused. No one had ever heard of such a rule, but Jade had magically interpreted one to fit her point. The day after that, she sent him a note claiming his garbage bin had been visible for 1 extra minute after pickup. 1 minute. David laughed out loud when he read it, but the laugh wasn't from humor. It was disbelief. It was obvious now. Jade wasn't enforcing rules. She was targeting him. Every violation was petty, stretched, exaggerated, or downright invented. And Jade delivered them all with the confidence of someone who believed she was untouchable. David tried to let it go. He worked long hours as a logistics manager, balancing deadline schedules and a small team that relied on him. He didn't have time for neighborhood politics or dramatic power trips. But Jade, she seemed energized by the harassment, as if she'd found her favorite new hobby. Whenever he came home, he'd see her lingering on sidewalks, jotting notes, watching. She even began making comments loud enough for other residents to hear, remarks about acceptable standards and certain homeowners not fitting Cypress Grove's image. One evening, after a 14-hour workday, David was tucking his daughter into bed when a loud thump hit the front door. He rushed down, thinking it was an emergency, only to find Jade on his porch, uninvited, shoving another notice between the doorframe with theatrical force. His daughter peeked from the staircase, startled. Jade didn't apologize. She didn't even acknowledge she'd frightened a child. She just turned, heels clicking across the wood, and walked away like she'd accomplished something important. That was the moment David's patience snapped. This wasn't about grass or plants or trash bins. This wasn't about rules at all. This was about power, Jade's obsession with it, and her need to flex it on someone she thought wouldn't push back. The next HOA meeting came faster than Dave expected. The community center filled with folding chairs and murmuring neighbors. Some came for updates, others out of curiosity. Everyone had heard the tension brewing. Jade stood confidently at the front, wearing a trendy blazer, high heels, and an expression that said she was the ruler of this tiny kingdom. She tapped the microphone and launched into her speech about standards, consistency, and discipline, her favorite trio of words. Most residents listened politely, though some shifted uncomfortably. Jade's tone always made people feel like they were being scolded. Then, with rehearsed precision, she singled them out. "Some homeowners," she said, letting the sentence hang as she glanced directly at David, "think the rules don't apply to them." The room stiffened. A few heads turned toward him. Jade folded her arms, chin lifted, daring him to respond, practically inviting a showdown she clearly thought she'd win. David sat back in his chair, jaw tightening, pulse steadying. She wanted him to explode. She wanted a scene. She wanted him to explode. She wanted a scene. She wanted proof that he was a problem. And for the first time, David felt something new, not anger, but absolute clarity. She was pushing him, cornering him, testing him. And in that moment, he realized something Jade never expected. She was about to get exactly what she'd been asking for. It all came to a head on a bright, quiet afternoon when Jade stormed up David's driveway again. This time with her phone already recording, arms stretched out like she was filming an episode of a reality show no one asked for. She didn't bother with greetings. She just raised her voice loud enough for everyone on the street to hear. "David," she announced dramatically, "this is your final warning. Your fence color is not HOA approved. I'm issuing a mandatory repaint order effective immediately." David stared at her in disbelief, wiping his hands on a towel after fixing a loose hinge on his garage door. "The fence came with the house," he said slowly. "It's been here for years. It was approved by the HOA long before you took over." Jade rolled her eyes behind her oversized sunglasses, stepping closer like a prosecutor closing in on a confession. "Things change," she snapped sharply. "And I'm in charge now." David raised an eyebrow. "Jade, you don't have the authority to make up new rules." But Jade tossed her ponytail, planting her heels firmly on his sidewalk like she owned the property. "I absolutely do," she declared. "I'm modernizing this neighborhood, raising our standards. And if you can't keep up—" Her sentence was dripping with attitude, but David cut her off, voice calm but firm. "Jade, stop. This is harassment." That single word, harassment, made Jade scoff so loudly a nearby dog barked. "Oh, please," she said, waving her hand as if batting away a fly. "Don't play the victim card. Just follow the rules like everyone else." But David was done playing nice. In one smooth, controlled motion, he turned and walked inside his house, leaving Jade blinking on his porch, still recording. 30 seconds later, he returned holding a thick, neatly organized folder. He held it out to her. "What's this?" she demanded, suspicion flickering across her face. "Documentation," David said, voice steady and dangerously calm. "Every notice you sent me. Every time you stepped onto my property without permission. Every rule you violated by changing policies without approval from the actual board." For the first time since she became HOA president, Jade looked almost unsure, but only for a breath. Then she laughed, crossing her arms defensively. "You think anyone's gonna take your side?" she sneered. David didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice, didn't move back. Instead, he stepped forward with the kind of composure that rattled even the boldest people. "I already met with the board," he said quietly, so calmly it was chilling. "And my attorney." The color drained just slightly from Jade's face, but she tried to mask it with a scoff. "Your attorney?" she repeated, but her voice didn't have its usual edge. David didn't let up. "And the county HOA regulatory office," he added. "They're very interested in your behavior, especially the unauthorized rule changes and the targeted enforcement." That landed like a stone. Jade swallowed hard. Her phone, still recording, wobbled slightly in her grip. For the first time all month, she wasn't the loudest voice on the street. She wasn't the one in control. Silence spread across the neighborhood like a wave. A couple walking their dog stopped mid-step. A teenager on a bike slowed to a crawl. Curtains shifted. Doors cracked open. And yes, phones lifted. People who quietly endured Jade's power trip were suddenly very interested witnesses. Jade looked around, realizing the audience she had invited with her loud accusations was no longer cheering for her. David held her gaze, unbothered. "This ends today," he said simply. And for once, Jade had no comeback. 2 days later, an emergency HOA meeting was called, and the moment the notice went out, the entire neighborhood practically sprinted to the clubhouse. Word spread fast. Jade Thompson, the youngest, boldest, and most controversial HOA president Cypress Grove had ever seen, was finally being called to account. The meeting room was so full that people stood along the walls and spilled into the hallway. Jade strutted to the front like she owned the building, heels clicking, chin lifted, wearing her signature blazer as if cameras were rolling for her grand entrance. She expected applause. She expected loyal nods. She expected to be defended. Instead, she was met with stiff faces and tense silence. The 5 board members sat behind a long table with stacks of papers, printed emails, timestamps, and folders, and every single one looked furious. Jade's smile faltered only slightly before she forced it back into place. She thought she could talk her way out of anything. She always did. But today wasn't like any other day. The board president, a calm older man named Mr. Hayes, cleared his throat, his eyes colder than anyone had ever seen. "Jade Thompson," he began sternly, "we have spent the last 48 hours reviewing multiple reports, resident complaints, and documented evidence provided against you." The room buzzed. People leaned forward. Jade laughed lightly, brushing back her ponytail. "Evidence? Oh, come on. People complain about everything. I've just been enforcing standards." But Hayes cut her off. "Your unauthorized fines," he said, lifting the first stack of papers, "issued without board approval." He placed them on the table with a heavy thud. "Your bias enforcement," he added, lifting another pile, "targeting specific residents, including the same resident repeatedly." Jade's smile cracked. Several people in the crowd murmured, some shaking their heads. Hayes continued, his voice slicing through the room. "You're trespassing onto private property without permission." More papers hit the table. "Your creation of new HOA rules without board vote, resident notification, or legal compliance." The board vice president spoke next. "We also received statements from multiple homeowners who report similar harassment, intimidation, and selective targeting." A wave of gasps rolled through the room. Jade's eyes widened. "Wait, what? Other homeowners? They're exaggerating. I did nothing wrong. I was just improving the neighborhood," she insisted, her voice climbing with panic. "You abused your position," Hayes said sharply. "You targeted residents," the treasurer added. "You created liability for the HOA." Another board member followed. Jade looked around wildly. You're twisting this. I was doing my job. Do you want this neighborhood to fall apart? Do you want people ignoring standards? She jabbed a finger toward the audience. Half of you don't even mow your lawns properly. Someone had to take control. A wave of offended groans filled the room. That didn't help her case at all. Hayes lifted one final sheet of paper, the conclusion. And as of today, he said slowly, letting the moment hang like a gavel over a courtroom, you are removed as HOA president effective immediately. The room erupted, gasps, whispers, even a few claps before they were shushed. Jade froze, mouth hanging open. Removed? She squeaked. You can't remove me. You need me. I run this place. Hayes shook his head. No, Jade. You tried to run the people, not the neighborhood. From the back of the room, David stood. Calm, steady, dignified. His presence alone quieted the crowd. You tried to intimidate and control this community, he said clearly. We live here. We're supposed to feel at home here, not afraid of you. Jade looked at him, her face flushing deep red. You, she snapped. This is because of you. You turned them against me. You, no, David replied calmly. You did that all on your own. The crowd murmured in agreement, a sound Jade had never heard before. Not respect, not fear. Truth. Hayes continued reading the board's final decision. You're also fined for unauthorized enforcement actions, in accordance with state HOA regulations. Additionally, you are banned from contacting residents regarding HOA matters, effective immediately. Jade staggered back a step. Banned? Fined? You can't be serious. Dead serious. Hayes said, your behavior is unacceptable, unethical, and illegal, and it ends today. The weight of his words settled over the room like a stone. Jade's confidence, once her armor, cracked completely. Her shoulders slumped. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. For the first time since she'd taken power, Jade Thompson had no comeback, no argument, no dramatic speech. She was done. Residents watched her quietly, some relieved, some stunned, some recording the historic moment on their phones. The queen of the clipboard had finally lost her crown and every ounce of authority that came with it, and she had no one to blame but herself. The next morning, David stepped outside to grab his newspaper. Neighbors waved. Some thanked him. Others nodded with relief. He didn't celebrate. He didn't brag. He wasn't that type of man. But he felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Later that evening, his daughter hugged him tightly. Daddy, she whispered, is the mean lady gone? David smiled softly. She won't bother us anymore. Across the street, Jade sat on her porch, shoulders slumped, scrolling through messages from neighbors she once intimidated. Her power was gone, replaced by a reputation she couldn't escape. David glanced her way once, not with anger, but with clarity. Some battles don't need shouting. Some victories come quietly. And sometimes the strongest stand is simply refusing to be pushed down. Justice didn't roar. It spoke softly, through the man she tried to silence.